Hello, WIZkids. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Sarah, we have some special visitors with us today. We have members of HEAL.
I know.
So fun. So typically we're used to teaching kids. If you've never heard of WIZkids before, it's our hospital school hour, and we target usually elementary school students. So this is a little bit of a different audience.
Yeah, you guys are the oldest students we've ever had. So.
Yeah. If you've never joined us before, kids usually get a packet delivered to their room that looks something like this. It has all the materials they'll need for the lesson that we're doing that day. Since we can't really mail you a packet, Sarah, will you show them what their document
Yeah, you guys
like?
should have access to a document like this, and the most important thing right now for you to know is there's a QR code up in the corner, and what we need you to do is scan it, just like the kids would in their room. This tells us who's participating today, and for the kids, it helps us know that we're going to come back around and get them a brag tag so they collect a new one for every lesson that they do. We don't have brag tags to send to you, but we do have something else fun that we think you might find helpful. So at the end of the lesson today, we'll remind you, scan the QR code. We'll want to see the fun artwork that you create too, and we'll send a little something your way. Speaking of today, Annie, what are we going to learn about today?
Super fun. We have a special guest that's going to teach us how to develop our professional mantra.
Ooh, in a very artsy way.
In an artsy way. You guys will create something super special to keep with you to kind of remind you of that mantra. Do you want to show them an example?
Yeah, and I think it's awesome. It's so colorful, cool. But we'll talk more about this in a little bit, and I think the neat thing about it is it's something you can keep close and remind yourself daily why you do this job.
Yeah, and it was actually developed by a community guest that we often have who used to be who is a parent of a former patient.
You got it.
Super cool.
Yeah.
But I feel like they don't know how we started WIZkids.
There's a lot that goes into this program to get to this point that we're here today. So maybe we should back up and hit some of those things a little bit.
I think we should.
Let's do it. Let's rewind.
So Sarah, everyone's probably wondering why you started WIZkids.
So it really was two main reasons. The first was out of necessity. So I was a one-person show here for a very long time and found it hard to find a way to identify what kids I needed to provide the most extensive services for without spending half the day combing through their files. And so I thought if I create a space where kids could drop in and come to me, then I'd be able to start to track the trends of how long they've been here. I can do a little bit of getting to know them and figure out more about why they're here, and then really it was more clear to find out who should get those advanced liaison services. The second reason really is normalcy. I mean, school is a full-time job of these kids. It's what they do and it's what they're missing. And so if we could provide a little experience that felt like an elementary school experience to them, that was an added benefit.
Sarah, I can totally see why as the only person on your team, how you would need to build something that would get the kids to come there and you would be able to see so many kids in a short amount of time.
It really was a time saver.
Yeah, totally. If someone out there was watching and wanted to start one in their own hospital, where would they even begin?
It's a really good question, and to be honest, I had a long time to think about this because I dreamt about it for a long time of how to do it differently, but I think the most important part was I had a lot of time for personal processing and reflection. So I asked a lot of questions and tried to anticipate what would my stakeholders need to know. And we'll talk more about stakeholders in a second, but questions like how long do you want each session to be? What days of the week or when on the calendar do you want WIZkids or your program to occur? Who's able to attend? Where are you going to hold this? Do you have a special location, and can you accommodate kids from every unit that would want to participate, or is that a factor that would play into who and when they could participate?
There are a lot of things to think about.
There are, even like, what are you going to call it?
Yeah.
And how do you get kids to come back? I mean, there's so many elements, but to be honest, the dreaming is part of the fun.
Yeah,
so
totally.
The sky's the limit on that, and some of it will, like my experience won't be your experience. Well, it'll be your experience, but it may not be your experience. So,
okay, so I'm hearing reflection is good.
It's big. You have a lot to think about.
So what's next?
Yeah, I think the next thing is to take all of these ideas and put it into a proposal or a presentation. And you want to have a core presentation, but then thinking of all the different stakeholders, you want to be able to adapt that presentation to better meet the needs of your audience. So for example, what you say to your boss or what you say to a donor who may help support your program could be really different than what you're going to present to the nurse managers and to the executive leadership of the hospital.
Okay.
So cater your information and keep it quick and concise, because those nurse managers, they don't need all the details like the donors want. One wants story, one wants facts. So keep that in mind. Yeah.
Okay, so have you experienced any specific roadblocks in this process when you're presenting?
Yeah, I think my biggest advice to people watching this presentation, trying to start this, is really keep an open mind when you're doing those presentations, because I learned just as much from the people I was presenting to as they learned about what we were looking to start. And I think the best example of that was when talking with the nurse managers. There was a lot of questioning about the time of day. So initially I had thought right after lunch might be a really good time. Well, what I didn't know was a different initiative was taking place behind the scenes in our hospital that was going to roll out for a 1 o'clock start time. And because it hadn't yet been there, I just wasn't privy to that information. But they knew, and so they were able to steer me to a different time. So we went with the morning. I proposed 10:30, and it actually is a really great time because kids are awake, they've had breakfast, it's not yet lunchtime, but we're in a hospital, and that's exactly when doctors want to be rounding.
Yeah.
You can imagine
hard,
that's
yeah.
a tough thing. So the nurse managers provided feedback on that, and really what I was able to do is learn what the worries would be. And we were able to maintain that same time, but come up with some creative solutions to those concerns that made it so that the kids were still accessible.
Okay.
So as easy as we put a magnet on their door saying, I'm at WIZkids, call this number, and they would call us. We would get the child down there, and they would be there before. Yep, so the nurse could get them there before the doctors rounded.
That's awesome.
And it worked really well. I mean, that worked for our hospital. That may be very hospital dependent. But
as with time, you know.
Exactly. So just keeping an open mind and being willing to hear the concerns. So it wasn't enough of a concern to say we shouldn't do this.
Right.
But it was just a way to
do it.
how to do it differently so that it works for everyone. And honestly, I thought that would be a huge roadblock, that the patients weren't in the room when the doctors wanted to round, but we got there.
But it seems like you use teamwork too to figure out a creative solution that works for everybody.
Absolutely, and I think that the more collaboration that you can have, it also helps with the buy-in of the program then when you do launch it, because then those nurse managers can say, well, we've already discussed that, or here's what it will look like, and it helps move it forward and gives little propulsion behind the program.
So you talk to donors, you talk to nurse managers. Were there any other kind of key stakeholders that you talked to?
Well, a big one, the children, their families, I wanted to make sure that I had a program that was for kids and that would be interesting to kids.
Yeah.
So I talked to a lot of kids and asked what does their school look like? What would they want to do? What do they not want to do? And learning a lot about that.
I love that.
I also was able to present, once we had approval, to the Patient Family Advisory Council.
Okay.
So I could get input from the parent perspective as well, and again, very helpful information to put in place before we executed the program.
Totally. So you've got the logistics, you've got the approval, and you're one person. How do you get the word out?
Yeah, that's a challenge. That was a kind of a big undertaking, and something that I knew I needed help. I knew I needed to find some allies. And so first what I did was create some marketing tools. And I wanted to really make sure, our hospital, this was kind of a roadblock for us. Our hospital has very clear branding and marketing regulations. And so the downside to that was it didn't look very kid-friendly. And so I did have to work around that to see if we could use a similar system, but tweak it to get the kid-friendly images.
Totally.
So that way the kids, even if they couldn't read, they would still know this is designed for kids, this is for me, and this has to do with school, which I love, right? So got the right tools. The other thing that did, Amy, was it allowed us to put common language in place that shared what the program was. It gave all of the specific information in writing, and then I could empower my allies, so care managers, child life specialists, nurses, physicians, anyone, and I could just plant these cards all over the hospital, sprinkle them out, and ask people to hand them out. So you're the care manager, you're walking into the room for the first time, take one of these postcards with you and say, hey, you're elementary age, do you know about WIZkids? they don't necessarily have to know because it's all on the card.
Yeah,
Like,
and what a
everything
great
you need to know
entry.
is right here. So yeah, actually a lot of the staff commented on that too, how it brought them something to say when they walked in the room. And you know, care managers, social workers, they love resources. So it was just one more great resource for them to hand out to a family. So that worked in my favor, creating that marketing. I think the other thing is time. You know, really we're talking about changing the culture within a hospital. And so to change culture in a 24/7 operation is really a challenge.
It's a lot different than a school.
Yeah, absolutely, because it doesn't stop ever. And
Right.
so, and the staff is constantly changing. And so what becomes important is sticking to it. And that can be hard because you might have a day early on where you don't have any kids show up. But to be honest, that was very rare, like a handful of times throughout a whole school year. And it told me that we needed to build the routine, have the consistency, and really make sure that our staff grew to know when this time was and what it was. And my line of thinking was, even if I could just meet with one child for that time, like to have one in the room isn't a loss in productivity, right? It's still
with a child.
With a child for that time working on school. So what was really cool was most days we had 3 to 5 to 10 to however many over time. We were able to really multiply our reach. And that's just who came in person. Because remember, we still have kids participating remotely and at the bedside too. So even though you have to start small and just really be consistent, it's kind of that if you build it, they will come. So one of the things, Andy, you heard me talk about is the group setting, but we also had the bedside setting. Our goal for this was always to get kids to come participate in the group. But in a hospital, you have kids who are in isolation. And so not everyone's eligible to get out of their room and attend in person. So we did develop this bedside program. But remember, the goal is always the group setting because of the normalcy and the therapeutic relationships they can
and
create.
the ability for you to meet them or in a small group.
Have more face-to-face interaction.
So how do you figure out who is eligible to come?
So that's where I again leaned into our partners, and I really worked with Child Life. So we are in our hospital, we're all part of the same team. Our Child Life specialists were already doing a daily check-in with the charge nurse, and so they were already talking about every single patient, and we could just easy add a question on their check-in to say, can they attend WIZkids? And if so, can they come up to the group school or do they need to participate from the bedside?
That's awesome.
They checked a little box and then they coordinated with their volunteers if they were going to take them to school or if the volunteer was going to take them there.
Awesome. So the volunteers would help get them to WIZkids.
Exactly.
What a great way for the volunteer to meet the kid too.
You got it. And just like every hospital, like there's going to be certain protocols in terms of how to get a child off the floor and what things they need to have. So, look into that. I'm sure people already know those processes within their own hospital system, but it is important to consider when you're taking them to a new spot.
Yeah. So somebody brings them to WIZkids. Walk me through what that's like, that even if it's their first time, what does that look like?
So we were able to take over our playroom for WIZkids, and so that's on the top floor of our building, and it's a beautiful view. But I think the most important thing for everyone to remember, regardless of where you hold it, is that this experience is brand new for these kids. Like, they know school and they know the vibe of elementary school, but they don't know you necessarily. They don't know the room. They don't know the other kids in the class. And so because of that, a warm welcome is really important.
Yeah.
And some routines that feel normal. And so we tried to put in some things that might feel like a typical elementary school with a new vibe. So they would make a name tag, or we would talk about learning targets, and everything is done with a very light, welcoming tone.
And I think that's really cool. I know from my experience in WIZkids, it's a good soft start too, because the kids aren't all coming at the same time, right? It takes some kids different time to get to the specific spot.
Exactly. So I think, we don't operate on a bell schedule here.
Yeah.
So to remember that kids could be trickling in and out of your lesson at any given time, you have to be ready for that, because as teachers, we like to plan. But the more
minute.
Yeah, exactly. The more proactive you can be, and you really do need someone else in the room with you too. And I think that's important to remember, because if a child does need to leave quickly, or you do get that call saying the doctors are rounding, you have to be able to immediately get them where they need to go. and not leave the other children behind.
Right.
So to have 2 people is really helpful.
So do you typically have a volunteer in there? Do you typically have another staff member? And has that changed over time?
Yeah, that exactly. It has changed over time. Some of it just depended on the day and what the other needs of the hospital were at that time. And so it was volunteers, but it also was our child life assistants. And then eventually my dreams came true and it was you guys. So we were able to add more teachers to our team, and here we are looking at how to adapt this program even more. We didn't, I mean, just like the kids don't know us, we don't really know the kids either, and so to plan a lesson effectively is a unique challenge from that angle. We needed to have something prepared and ready to go, have materials on hand, not knowing who was going to show, what their ability level was. So we created a little mini lesson, teach a little bit on it, so that now we know everyone in the room knows this much information, and then we could adapt our materials higher or lower depending on the needs of those children. You know, sometimes you have to be very creative with if they're laying flat in their bed.
Yep.
And, you know,
Their whole bed gets up there.
Exactly. If they don't speak English, if they are visually impaired. I mean, we've had all of, you know, these wonderful students show up in our classroom, and we don't know until they're there that that's going to need to be considered. And so it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
It's definitely part of the fun. But there's lots to consider when you're putting it together.
Do you have any specific memories that come to mind of kind of a extreme adaptation to a lesson?
I think just a fun one was one time I had a small group of girls, and they all happened to be about the same age.
Fun.
And what was really unique was that one of the girls was new to our country, and she did not speak much English at all. But the other child that was in the room actually attended a school that was an immersion school in her language. And so as I was teaching the lesson, she was a 3rd grader. She was translating what I was saying and reading the story to another student in her language. And it was just the most inspiring, I think, little lesson. And just to think of, you know, it was 1 hour in the day, but how wonderful it felt for both of those particular girls, not to mention the other students in the room who were watching and participating. I think they both felt needed and included. Yeah. And they were able to participate and give back. Yeah. And that really left everyone feeling pretty good.
So they're greeted warmly. It sounds like you have awesome lessons during WIZkids.
It's a lot of fun.
Totally. How does it end? How do you wrap it up?
Right, because we said no bell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me is how do we get them to come back again, right? So we want to end on a note where they are wanting more. And one of these, I actually learned this from a patient in one of my meetings before we put it together. And her advice to me was, don't call it school. Yeah. You know? So she's like, you have to make it feel and sound more like a club. And so we developed a secret handshake. And so at the end of every lesson, we would teach the kids the handshake, and then they could do that when they would come back the next day, or if we would see them in the hallway, and we would just do a big play on, but it's top secret, so you can't show anyone unless they're a part of this club too. So that was kind of a fun way to create a sense of belonging. One of the other things is to really affirm the work that they did. Yeah. And so we would encourage the kids to take the work that they completed and post it inside their rooms and have it showing out in the hallway, so that it could be sort of like a gallery walk for the other kids walking by, but it also gave the staff entering that room, again, something to talk about. And so the doctor would see this thing that they created and come in and say, wow, that's so great, where did you do that? And the kids would say, well, we did that in WIZkids today with teacher Sarah. And they could then talk about it and then have that conversation with their physician or a new med student. And again, the staff really responded well to that too. And found a nice little way to kind of build some rapport with our kids as well. So keeping it fun, having some little swag. We gave bracelets and pencils and folders and brag tags, which we'll talk more about later. You know, kids like free stuff.
Totally.
So
it really sounds like what you said earlier, the group setting is definitely the goal. That's the key.
Yeah, because it's the most like school, right? Yeah. So it's the normalcy and that collaboration with other kids.
But what about the kids who have been identified as appropriate to attend but maybe are in isolation or unable to leave their floors?
Yeah, we definitely have that as well, and we want to be as inclusive as possible, and we want as many kids to participate. And so we created a bedside program of WIZkids also. So what we do is we would pack all the activities for the lesson into a little bag, include scissors and glue and all the things that you might need, that the volunteer or the child life specialist or the assistant could take to their bedside. Now, the trick to this is they didn't have that mini lesson from us.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we pre-recorded videos and then used our in-house closed circuit.
Yeah.
And we were able to broadcast these videos that now the child could watch a video that we had created, get the mini lesson, and then do the activities right from their own bed. It definitely isn't the same. It doesn't
seem
peer
as fun,
peer.
but
Yeah. But it was still a good distraction, something to
Yeah.
do and something to engage their brains while they were in the hospital for a little bit. One of the neat things that this brought out, though, because as you can imagine, it's a lot to plan the lessons, teach the lessons, get the kids, do all this, and then have videos on top of it. And so one of the things, I started small. I tried to have 5 videos, so I at least had a week's worth. Our students rotate, so that was okay for a little while. But then I leaned into our community and found some really great resources. And one of the partnerships was a librarian from an elementary school. And she had her students practice reading aloud.
Wind and rain pushed the little toy boat into deep water. There it bobbed on high waves, topped with foam.
And so she would record her kids reading a book to our kids. And it was so great. So they would introduce themselves at the beginning. They would read the story, practice using fluency and inflection and character voices. And then at the end, they would say what their favorite part of the book was and ask our kids, what was your favorite? So it was kids reading
a little bit more of that peer interaction.
Yeah. And so I think that was really fun. We had, I think, over 30 to 40 videos just from that one resource alone. So you can see how it grew quickly. And then other people were excited to get on board too, like our rough readers, where we brought in our therapy dogs that kids could read to.
Sarah, that sounds like it was a lot of work. And I wasn't here to see any of that, but what kept you going?
So, I mean, it was a lot of work. It was a lot, but I would be remiss in not mentioning the people that helped me along the way. I mean, I was only one person here, but I had a lot of people cheering me on, including a ton of our members from HEAL and their expertise and wisdom across the country. So that was, I'm so grateful for that and forever will be. And then again, you guys coming in and our donors in our community to help build this program. So that was life-giving. But when I think of the why and what kept me going, I think of one particular story, if I can share. One of the cutest things was a small group. I think I had about 5 kids that day. We were sitting around the table and I was teaching about Henry's Freedom Box. Have you read that story?
Yeah, it's a slave story.
A neat story about kind of the Underground Railroad, right? And so Henry Box Brown is shipped to the north in a box by one of his friends to freedom. And so I had asked the children to make a connection between the story and something else, you know, talking about what do good readers do. And so one boy said, I can make a connection between this story and myself. And I said, really? Tell me how. And he said, well, it's kind of like coming to WIZkids today. So I wasn't really sure. I didn't know who was going to be here. I didn't know what it was going to be like. But now that I'm here and I see what we're doing, like, it's just people and you guys are nice and it's fun and it's school and this is what we do. So it was just a really cute connection to hear that, you know, this boy found a little of himself in the story, but more so that he got the concept behind this program. Like, this is just school. It's what we do, and it gives you a chance to interact and just be a kid. And it might feel a little uncomfortable at the beginning, but at the end of the day, it was comforting because it's what they do. So for me, that's the story that keeps me going.
And it's the kids, really.
Absolutely. It's always those kids.
Hey, Annie. Oh, Annie, you're muted. You're muted. You're on mute.
Sorry, it's so weird.
This is so weird. Who would have thought we would be teaching from our homes?
I know. Welcome to my house.
Yeah, my kitchen.
Oh my gosh, Sarah. So this is just, a weird experience. We never thought we would be teaching from home. Obviously, a lot in our program has changed, but a lot really since 2020 has changed.
Yeah, seriously. And I think we should say that even before COVID hit, our program had to adapt for many reasons.
Totally. Yeah, I know you could speak to a lot of how our team has grown since the start of the program, because it started as just you.
Right. I mean, we just did that whole segment, right, about how, you kind of kicked this off as a one-person program, but there were some amazing things that happened in 2017. So we were able to advocate for a teaching assistant, and a donor came forward and funded that position for us. And then 6 months later, another donor came forward and helped us hire you and Dee Dee too. And so then with Andrea on board, we've increased from 1 full-time FTE to 2.5. And that really was a game changer and required us to adapt all these programs, including WIZkids, a little more.
Totally. I think what's really cool is we were able to pour a little bit more into WIZkids, developing the lessons, working kind of toward our strengths. I know one of our other teachers, Dee Dee, was a math teacher, so she developed a lot of really cool statistics and symmetry and just some really cool lessons. Andrea,
still geared towards elementary though, right? I mean, yeah.
Andrea, our program assistant, she has a background in counseling and things like that, so she was able to develop some really cool lessons too.
To kind of build that psychosocial side of things for kids.
Absolutely. And then what's awesome is we then had more bodies up there, so we could have 2 of us up in the room. Like you mentioned, it's really important to have at least 2 up there, 2 adults, just so that, if kids have to go to the bathroom or they need to be taken back to their room, they have someone else to watch the kids. But then we were really able to develop the bedside piece of it too. The other teammates that were there that day could go work with a patient one-on-one bedside and fill out the packet, make the craft or whatever was included in there. And that just really opened a lot of doors into meeting some kids and giving, that one-on-one attention that we might otherwise not have entered the room.
Yeah, and I think it helped us be more aware of what that bedside experience was for the kids when we were creating that portion of our lesson, right? To know, oh, you know what, we should probably include an instruction sheet on how to do this, because if we're not there and they're doing it independently, they need a little more information. So, because at that point, they were just watching a pre-recorded video.
Yep.
In their room, and didn't have that person to ask questions and interact with. So super exciting to get in at the bedside and work with them one-on-one too.
Since we grew our team so much, we were really able to see an increase of participants in our program. What's super awesome is we were able to see roughly an additional 200 kids every year. So an increase of participation by that much every year since it started.
Including the year that we were sent home remotely to try to reach kids from afar. And I think that is remarkable.
Yeah. Since the program started, we've seen over 3,600 kids participating either in person or at the bedside, which I think is really awesome. But yeah, so being sent from home was a little weird.
Yeah, I was wondering if you want to talk about that and kind of explain what that looked like, because talk about adaptation, again, out of necessity, but man, we not only made it work, we made it work overnight, which is pretty fun too.
We did not skip a day. So we got sent home on a Monday, I think, and then Tuesday we were streaming from home just as we are right now. So
it was bumpy. I mean, it wasn't perfect by any means.
Yeah, so we were able to use Microsoft Teams, which is what we're using right now. And what kids saw in their rooms was very similar to what you're seeing right now. 2 of us were teaching a lesson, and it was kind of split screen. And we would include our Blue Glass Studios as the 3rd person, and they would stream this view out to the rooms. So that was really cool.
So Blue Glass Studio, do you want to quick explain what that is?
Yeah, so Blue Glass Studio is our in-house television kind of station. It's a channel that kids can turn on. We have pre-recorded content, but we also have some live shows, and we can talk about it in a little bit. But since coming back, we actually teach our WIZkids on air every day now. So
I just think it's a really great resource on our team that we were able to lean into, and that they were so willing to accept us to, help facilitate, because we couldn't have done this from home without them.
Oh, absolutely not. We didn't even know where to start. I remember that first day, like we were on 2 different floors trying to see if it would even work. And
yeah. And we also had a lot of help from some other people on our team when we were at home. Do you want to talk about that too?
Yeah, so since none of our school team was able to be in the building, we really had to lean into our Child Life team. And thankfully, they were super excited and willing to help us out. They created the packets, so we would tell them exactly what needed to be put in the packets. Of course, we had to have kind of limited materials since we're at home and we, don't have all the materials we would have in our schoolroom, but thankfully they were able to pass packets out to kids. They were able to help identify kids. Of course, they were able to do so because of kind of a lower census and, it was a little bit of a slower pace at the hospital with, things being canceled and restricted. So we really leaned into them, and we're so thankful that we couldn't have done it, like you said, without our Child Life team either.
So Annie, another way that we had to pivot with COVID was with our community visitors. Prior to being sent home, we had really developed our relationships with members in our community who were super excited to partner with us and come into our group setting and be kind of guest teachers with us, which was great. I mean, I think we had probably 5 to 7 a month who would participate in that way. And then obviously our hospital, like all hospitals across the country, put visitor restrictions in place, and we had to push pause on that element of our program. Do you want to talk about how that's kind of morphed over time too?
Yeah, so we had to get really creative when we were from home. Obviously, everything had to be kind of digital or virtual. I think we've mentioned before, we had our rough readers come in every week and bring their dogs, and kids would have the opportunity to read to the dogs.
And I feel like that was a routine that kids just loved. Like they knew every Wednesday there was going to be a dog to read with. They just looked forward to it.
Yeah, and I think we thankfully all had pets, so we got really creative, and we would have our pets be on air, and the kids could call in and read to them, or our pets would read to each other. We even had our Mayor Bliss, call it or send a video in of her reading to her dog, which was really fun to see. So we, each week was a little different, and we just got pretty creative with that. But thankfully, when we were back in the building, we were kind of able to change a little bit of how we did things. We were able to record ourselves on air in our studio, which is kind of how you saw at the beginning, but we still weren't able to have our community visitors back in the building. So we have a woman from the Gerald Ford Museum that helps teach lessons once a month, and so she has been able to Zoom or Skype, or I don't even know what they do, but they're able to call in and do similar to what we're doing right now and still teach the lesson. So we're still kind of creative in that limbo of not being able to have visitors in the building.
But we're so excited knowing that eventually they'll be able to come back someday, because they really do enhance our program and bring some of the outside in to our kids in the hospital. So I can't wait for that part to come back.
Me too. And it serves as kind of a field trip, which is something that's great too. So when we were able to be home, we still were kind of able to interact with the kids a little bit. Part of our Blue Glass Studios, the kids have their hospital phone, or they can use a cell phone, and they call in our specific number, and their voice kind of is over the air. So we're able to talk to kids, ask questions, give prompts, communicate. And even it's a little bit fun too, because we can have 2 kids on air at the same time, so they can even interact with each other. Which we thought was really engaging, and we thought that our lessons were really engaging based on that, but I think we were able to learn the contrary on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I remember that feeling so energizing, like, oh my goodness, we're at home, but we can still hear the kids and they can still interact and call in and talk to us. Like that was really, it felt like a lifeline. But it wasn't until we got back into the building that we started to realize we had a little bit of a misconception of reality. And when we got back in the building, for people who are watching, only 2 of the 4 of us were able to return initially. And so Annie, you and I were actually the ones that came back first. And I think that's when we became the learners. We started to see things from the lens of the children in their room and not from this side of the computer screen. I think the biggest thing was we were missing the mark on the whole interactive piece. We thought we were super interactive, but really it became very clear that kids were more of like an audience member than a participant, because we were still just coming over their TV and we were just another show. And although they could call in, we were pretty heavy on some of the information things.
Yeah.
So
I think we learned too that the traditional instruction loses kids even quicker in this setting than it does in a classroom setting. We need people to read their faces or get a vibe of, is this boring? Are they understanding what we're talking about?
Right. All those like normal assessment tools were missing.
Yeah.
So once we were back in the hospital, we had an opportunity to talk to some of the kids and the patients that were the viewers and our WIZkids. It was really interesting, Annie. I remember talking to one student in particular, and we heard his voice over the calls, and we thought like super interactive. And gosh, did we learn a lot from him when we got back. Because I remember him saying like, you right away have to hook us, because we could flip that channel and turn to watch a different movie or a different show, but start with something fun, engaging, interactive, rather than jumping right into the learning part of the lesson. So I think having that hook was really important. And that was, those were his words. And then also making it more interactive and truly hands-on for them, so that we really are engaging the learners. And I think you're going to talk about how we did that and other elements that we were able to incorporate. But man, I just go back to seeing it from the eyes of the kids in the building really changed my perception, at least, and I think yours too, of how we needed to deliver this content and curriculum a little bit differently.
Yeah, one particular lesson that we did that kind of comes to mind is, and I think we've talked about how we do some of our lessons, our weekly themes. So I think it was a specials week, and this particular lesson was PE day. And it's hard to do PE with a bunch of kids who may or may not be able to get out of their beds.
And over the TV.
Exactly.
Yes.
So we did a Michigan versus Michigan State kind of a challenge. In their packets, among all the other things, they had a little card that revealed their team, but it was on with our little scratch-off sticker, so it made it a little more exciting. So they were able to figure out which team they were kind of assigned. And then our hook was just to have kids call in and tell us which team they were on, and they would earn points. So we had a scoreboard at the bottom, and we were keeping track, and it was so fun, so competitive. They had various little like minute to win it challenges that they could do in their room that we were doing in the studio. And the buy-in was that they would earn points for their team, and the winning point would get the Paul Bunyan trophy, which I think just was a brag tag. But I think we've learned some creative ways to deliver information that aren't in a PowerPoint form. Obviously PowerPoints are so helpful for them to see images or a few words to learn some information. But I think we've learned that some of the best ways to deliver the information are through that competition, or that, Kahoot, or some kind of challenge to warm their brains up, like, think of all the different things you know about monkeys, or something like that, where they can truly express what they know and learn new things, but in a way that doesn't feel like they are the receiver of the information.
Annie, we've talked a lot about the lessons that we've learned from kids, but we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about our actual lessons. And I wondered if you wanted to say a little bit more about the themes that you mentioned earlier to the group.
Yeah, so each week we kind of pick a theme, and we align our lessons to fit that theme, either loosely or more formatively. So some of the examples we've done are, we did a Time Travelers Week, which we traveled to different parts of history and learned kind of how life was run in those different times. So we went to some of the places were like the medieval times. I think we went to ancient Rome, the Wild West. So every day is a little different. We've gone around the world a couple of times where we've taken the kids to a mystery country. They get a little passport and they get clues and they have to kind of figure out where we're traveling. Some of the places we've gone include Brazil, South Africa, Japan, Italy. We've also done, I think my favorite week that we do is the Full Steam Ahead. So it's our STEAM week where we do crazy science every day. So we've done some paleontology with dino digs, we've done forensics, we do messy science, chemistry, physics, all kinds of fun stuff like that.
I feel like that's always super popular with the kids.
Absolutely. And it's so fun when we can provide the kids with their own little science experiments to do in their room. And we've also done, the options are endless with children's literature. So we've done some Stories Alive weeks where we unpack themes in children's literature, friendship, fairy tales, safety, even generational differences. And we've kind of taken that story and really brought it to life with the lessons. So our weeks kind of mimic the school calendar. So we follow like the start of the school year, we'll have a winter break, we'll have a spring break, and then we do take off for the summer. So the kids do not participate in WIZkids over the summer, but we do try and fit in some not science camps, but we fit in some summer camps, one of them being science camp. We've also done imagination camp. So we just picked like a week each month usually and do another themed week. We've also done art camp, which we have been able to collaborate with a community partner who is actually our community partner who will help establish our personal mantra later on in the presentation, but she's done a lot for our art camp too. So same thing, we still hand out packets, we still identify kids the same way. It's just a fun way to kind of keep doing our program when we're not really in session.
Yeah, listening to this, and obviously I'm with you all the time, so it's fun, we're living it, but it does bring to mind that we should probably talk about supplies and resources a little bit to the people watching. We are so reliant and appreciative of our community donors. We could not do this. So our whole program is funded through philanthropy, and that is not lost on us, but that includes like our daily supplies. And so as you can imagine with COVID too, it's really different than in that classroom setting where we could have group supplies, just like a normal classroom, and really clean and wash and wipe them down. Where here we need one-time use supplies. And so we're going through scissors and glue and crayons and paper and all these things just at unbelievable rates right now. And our donors in our community have just continued to step up and support our program. And I feel like so grateful that they continue to see the importance of this and rally behind us for these kids, knowing that, again, this is what they need to feel like they're students when they're hospitalized. And so I think that's an important thing for people looking to start a program like this, to have an idea of where you're going to get your resources from, because you're going to need a lot of scissors.
So, lot.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, I mean, it's wonderful that we were able to do this on Teams and super connect this way, but since we're back in the hospital now, do you think we should head back there?
Please, can we get back in the building? I would love that. So we'll see you there soon, Annie.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back to the studio after that little history lesson on WIZkids and how we've gotten here. I'm really excited to talk about our lesson today, Annie, and I know we're adapting it for our older students that are watching, but we have some really great takeaways that we think you guys are going to be able to apply to your professional experience on a daily basis. I think one of the things we like to do is just kind of jump in with little brainstorming. So if you can get a piece of paper a second, I want you to think about some of the main characteristics and traits that you try to take with you into a patient room. So when you're meeting a family for the first time, or you're walking in to deliver a lesson, we never know quite how that family's feeling, but what are the words that kind of embody the spirit of how you would want to enter that room? So take a second, just list a few, okay?
So what you want to bring into a room, or words that kind of help you guide you in your introduction.
And while you're writing, I just want to explain a second. This is normally a time where we would ask for kids to call. And so they would call our TV studio, and we'd be able to hear their voice over the speaker, and they could offer some word suggestions to us. So since we don't have callers on the line, but we do have a couple of friends in our studios, do you guys want to chime in and give us a couple words that you think might be Good ones that people could put on a list.
Happiness.
Okay. I heard happiness. Annie, do you have any yet?
Yeah, I wrote joy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I put patience.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding.
That's a good one, too.
Trust.
Ooh, yeah,
Ooh, I like
trust.
that.
So I'm confident that you guys are making a nice long list. We're gonna keep moving forward here and we're gonna revisit this list, so keep it nearby, but just a little bit to spark your thoughts as we talk about this next step.
Yeah, and one of the things we kind of realize as we've been developing this program is we learn the most from the parents and the patients'
Absolutely.
perspective. You know, we're teachers, but they're really the real teachers here. And we have a lesson kind of from a former patient, his parent, and she is kind of our guiding force in this art project. She's actually an art teacher as well. And she is going to kind of talk to us about some of the lessons she's learned and help us develop our professional mantra.
Yeah, and one of the things I love is that we've been able to partner with Erin for many of our WIZkids lessons with her skills as an art teacher, and I love that she just wanted to give back to the hospital because of their experience too. So we're learning from a good one here. I think it will be fun. So should we take a second to watch that video?
Yeah, I think so. So don't worry about trying to follow along with her. We'll kind of break it down after the video. But we wanted you to get kind of a sense of what the kids see, and then we always do it with them after.
You bet. And keep this list nearby because she has a lot of good things to say that might trigger a few new words for you. We'll see you in just a second.
Hi. Before we get started with our lesson, I'd like to share a little bit about my background. So I am not only an art teacher and a mother of 4, but I'm a mom of a cancer patient survivor. So we found that our 4-year-old son was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma, high risk. It was an earth-shattering time in our lives, and we had such a difficult time processing it. But the people at our hospital, Helen DeVos Children's Hospital, were fantastic in helping us process and work through the issues that we had in front of us. Not only did they help us with that, but they helped save our son's life as we were immersed in the hospital culture. Now, many days, it was so difficult to just put one foot in front of the other, and we were living our days breath by breath, minute by minute, hour by hour. There was no other choice. The hardships we had to endure were nothing in our hearts compared to what our son Lucas endured with treatment. We had this mantra in our family, and we had these words that we would repeat over and over to help ground us and anchor us and align our focus with what needed to be done. I want to share an art lesson with you about how you can reflect and have this mantra running through your mind. It'll be a reflective art project that you can put in your binder, in your work folder, so that you can refer to it anytime you need a little reminder. Now, the good news is our little boy is thriving. He was diagnosed at age 4, but he is now a fantastic, funny, outgoing, living healthy 10-year-old. I can't wait to share this lesson with you in hopes that you will use it to reset yourself so that you may help each family as you walk into their room with a fresh frame of mind. Here we go. I'm going to start off just by brainstorming some words that come to mind that are helpful when working with people in a difficult situation. Fill your page, keep going, let the brain flow, and find some words that really are meaningful for you. Now, in my family, our mantra was kindness, patience, and love. Kindness, patience, and love. And we use that recurring mantra over and over as we, kind of struggled through our day. Now you're going to divide your paper into thirds any way you like. You can use these wonky lines. It doesn't matter. But the key to this project is that you will want to make sure your letters touch top to bottom in each section. I'm starting with the first and the last letter. Sometimes that helps you to stay visually organized so you're not scrunching some letters down at the very end. And I'm just filling this, remember having your letters touch top to bottom. What that's doing is making shapes for you to color in. Now for adding color. This is what I like to think of as thoughtful coloring. For example, in the word patience, I'm using all warm colors because it really reminds me that when we need to have patience the most are when the people in front of us are just red hot with emotion. So really put some thoughtfulness into this and use your imagination and your previous experiences to add thoughtful coloring into your spots. It's a great way to play around with pattern and, things that are important and symbolic to you. So, I hope you enjoy this fun little thoughtful project.
How great is it that we can add her skills to our program?
I mean, we really do luck out that she's a resource that's willing to help
She's
support
really
our program.
awesome. And our kids really respond well to her. Her videos are short and sweet, and they give you the cool lesson, and sometimes she gives a little mini lesson beforehand about colors or shapes or things like that.
Yeah, I think, her style and her energy speaks to kids, but we also know that she goes through it really quickly, which is helpful because kids' attention span, as we know, is short. But then we come back and we break it down.
Yeah.
So I think we should head that way.
I think so too.
So you have your list that we started ahead of time with a few words, and I heard Erin suggest that we pick 3. You can pick however many you want to, but I'm gonna pick 3.
Okay.
Did you add any more to your list since hearing her message?
Well, I love her message of patience because I really need to add that. And I also added balance and humor.
Oh yeah, good. I think the 3 that I'm gonna pick are encouragement and honor and listen. So I feel like, there are so many words you could use, and again, you can have as many as you want to, but if you kind of hold on to 2 or 3 that you feel like if you walk into a room with these, you're probably ready to meet that patient or that family where they are. So
Super cool. I picked sunshine,
Oh, I like
compassion, and patience.
Awesome. Okay, so what's our next step?
So I think she said to just grab a piece of blank white paper or
Yeah.
whatever kind of paper you have around, and she wanted you to divide it in thirds, but it didn't need to be straight across. She kind of made hers
Yeah.
like swirly and jaggedy, so I think just kind of I know oftentimes she'll say just kind of let your pencil or pen guide you,
Okay.
so I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah,
Just
so
dive in.
we've never done this before either, you guys, and this is
Yeah.
how we do it. We watch her video and then try to do it in that we could troubleshoot what the kids might experience as well. So here we go, making our professional mantras. In thirds, kind of, you said.
Yeah. We'll see about that.
All right, this is what I ended up with. Ooh, I like yours. Okay, so now what I heard her say was it's just important that you touch the top and the bottom together.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to remember what word I'm going to start with.
I know.
I think I'm going to try to do mine in order, so I'm going to start with this one.
I'm gonna start with this. Oh, I like this one. This is really
And if-
walking you.
Yeah, and if you guys are watching at home, again, we're going to try to do this like we would with the kids, but we're hoping these resources are just things that you have around the house. And if, again, just get the idea if you decide later this is something you want to do. One of the things we do with the kids too is give a QR code link to Erin's videos so that the kids could watch them later in the room. And that way if the doctor comes in or they're just feeling a little sleepy, they don't have to worry about missing out on this project. We can do it later too.
I love
So-
that. And it's a great way to go into a room too, even if it's not with WIZkids. We just take sometimes a QR code and an art project, and it's a great way to meet kids. You got it.
Sometimes I'm guilty of stealing Erin's style.
Yeah.
She's so talented, but I just want to use her artwork ideas sometimes. Maybe it's just inspiration.
I think she'd be flattered.
How are you doing?
Okay,
on yours?
how do you touch the I to the top and bottom?
Well, I'm struggling with the T.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm hoping it will come together once we start to do the actual coloring of things. You know what else I really like about this project is it's, it makes a product that is very meaningful to you, but you could put this on your desk or your bulletin board and it looks like nice artwork.
Yeah.
But it has a bigger meaning that doesn't just come out and scream these words either. So I think that's kind of a fun adaptation to your own style. That's looking great. Yours is making me think of the mountains.
Yours is making me think of the beach.
Okay.
I like it.
At the beach.
Yeah, me too. Sarah, what's your favorite project that you've done that's an Erin-inspired art project?
My favorite one is she has so many good ones, but I think I really like the sunglass selfie.
I knew it.
You knew I was going to pick that one? It's so
I
cute.
love it.
So you guys should check out that video that she has too. But
Yeah, I think we could
sunglass
share a link
selfie-
of her YouTube station.
Yeah,
or
we can put that
site.
on there. You bet. You bet. What's yours?
That's a hard question. I was gonna say either sunglass selfie or the under the sea.
Ooh, the folk art fish.
Folk art fish, yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Awesome. And the neat thing is for all of you guys watching that she would love it if you wanted to share her videos. I think, and whether you decide to make your own or find other partners in the community to help you do that, or just use Erin's, like any resource you can bring in, help save you some time too in planning these lessons and getting really good quality things out in front of the kids. So, well, Annie, I don't know if we should keep going with our whole thing here. I think they get the general idea. You guys can probably finish these up in color. I think an important thing that I learned from her was once you get the words that are meaningful to you, don't forget that you can use your artistic style and creativity to add some extra meaning. So just have fun, make it your own style. I think a reminder that we'd love for you to take a picture of your final product and send it to us. So again, if you scan the QR code, it will bring up a link to an email address. And all you need to do is send us that photo. And if you have any feedback, we love feedback as teachers, and we would love to adapt and learn from your programs as well. So please know you can reach out to us at any time if you guys are interested in starting a program like WIZkids in your own hospitals.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I know this was kind of a mix of fun and also a little bit of information about our program. And we typically end our shows with the fact that bingo is on at 2 o'clock and then at 4:30 our music therapist will be joining us for the high note, and they typically do some kind of song and dance.
And we also try to tease the lesson tomorrow. So be sure to join us back here tomorrow for a little monkey business as we travel to
the rainforest.
You got it. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you have a great day.